The following is a presentation of the ForceCenter podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, this is the ForceCenter podcast feed, and this is one of our deep dives, our Back to Tanks of Talk. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Ken Napzok, happy to dive on into that warm, gooey Bacta makes us feel so good and more enlightened.
Yes, Back to Tank for our minds as well. I guess that's the way it works for Boba Fett, so yes, hopefully that's the way it'll work for us. We are going to be talking today in this deep dive about appearance changes in Star Wars. I tried to come up with an exciting title, but that's what we're talking about, appearance changes. Obviously, a lot of discussion around the Kenobi trailer with the Grand Inquisitor, but lots of other characters and lots of other appearance changes throughout all of Star Wars. So that's what we're going to dive into. But first, we want to let you know that today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. You can get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. This week, we are recommending Mission to Disaster by Justina Ireland. To download your free audiobook, you can go to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. One more time, audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. But there is still more.
There is more, says Kylo Ren, and you got it, Kylo. Inside Editions, publisher of a ton of great Star Wars books, is offering 35% off across their website if you use this special link. Say it with me, kids. InsideEditions.com/discount/FC35. This week, we're recommending the Inside Editions book, The Mini Book of Lightsabers. It is a mini book full of lightsabers, and it's great. Again, use this link, InsideEditions.com/discount/FC35.
That is a book that, in my opinion, has a perfect appearance. I don't think it should change. It's perfect the way it is. It's mini. It's a book. It's full of lightsabers. Every part of it we love. Check it out. So we are going to get into our main topic. Like I was saying, there have been a lot of discussions recently about how certain characters appear in Star Wars, particularly when they're adapted from animation to live action. Ahsoka, Cad Bane, and most recently in the Obi-Wan Kenobi trailer, the Grand Inquisitor. Is his head grand enough? We're going to chat through how we process all those different looks in Star Wars. And Ken, I want to start here. You and I often try to own the parts of our perspective that maybe come from our age and our introduction to Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And we grew up with lots of variations in appearance, right? We saw the movies. But then there were those Macquarie illustrations that, in my little mind, when I saw them in packs of trading cards, they were unexplained. It was just like, here's a picture of Star Wars, but it's different. Like, I didn't quite get it. It's just like, it's Star Wars, but it's different. But then there were also comic book covers where Chewbacca looks very much more like an ape with a lot of hair. There's comic book covers where Obi-Wan's lightsaber is red. The action figures were not photorealistic. Check out Han Solo's heads. One of the main Star Wars posters showed Luke with bulging chest muscles. And in the other main poster, Vader's lightsaber is totally inaccurate. You and I grew up with a ton of different visions of what things looked like in Star Wars. Did growing up with all of that help us accept more variation in the looks? Did that happen for you? What are your thoughts?
I think without even fully realizing it, maybe it did. You mentioned the Macquarie ones. Love the Macquarie designs, love the history of it, love Ralph McQuarrie himself, so talented, such a key part of Star Wars. But I'm like you, I remember getting packs of cards, trading cards, and going, the hell is this? Well, I was a kid, I went, the heck is this? So I couldn't swear in my house. So yeah, it just was like, this isn't, no. And even some of the early ones, right? Like the one that's like Vader and he's got kind of like a breathing, like he's scuba diving, fighting Luke with a flashlight more than a lightsaber. I remember looking at that one going, well, that ain't Vader, before I understood concept arts and everything like that. So I think I dealt with it then and might be open to now. Some of it's just fun. Yeah, you mentioned the Kenobi, the red lightsaber. Even I'm reading the novel going, who's Blue 5? What happened to Red 5? So it might be part of it. And none of this takes away the conversation or those who have issues with some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about later, and we'll probably address that again. But yeah, no, I think that's an interesting starting point. We do own where we come from, and everyone comes to Star Wars from a different point of view. different times, different eras. But yeah, that it was the wild, I don't want to say Wild West, but the wild galaxy.
It was a wild galaxy. Yeah. And I think, maybe I should have offered one of our patented caveats at the beginning. If you're listening and the look of Grand Inquisitor bothers you, or you're a huge Ahsoka fan and it's a distraction while you watch, totally valid, totally understood. So we want to recognize that and respect that. And I think that where Ken and I both, I think, come from, and we'll discover, is that even when things bother us, it's not a focus for us. And I think I wanted to start with this question to maybe analyze why. Did we get, a little bit of a boost growing up in a time where things were rarely accurate when they were translated, right?
Yeah. Caveat indeed. Only because we try to just want to make sure there's room at the table for everyone here in our discussions. But like, I don't want to ever sound like I'm dismissive of some of the stuff. Like, I just plain didn't recognize the differences in live action Ahsoka. I needed the internet to point it out for me. Like, I could see it. I'm not, I'm not dumb. I saw the Leiku look a little different, but it didn't register with me. And I'm not saying that to be like, I don't care. I'm dismissive of your complaints. I just didn't live with it. And you're right to analyze where it came from. It might have been Ewoks looked a little different in the Ewok movie than they did in the Return of the Jedi film.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I really understand the perspective of like, if a person's like, I'm a huge Ahsoka fan, I am a huge Togruta fan, I got a million Shakti action figures. Hey, when we see that vision in the Mortis arc where she's older, her Montrals and Leku are bigger. When in Rebels they are. That's a part of these species. They're supposed to get bigger. So what's this?
Yeah.
Like, I understand if you're really invested in that, it can be a larger distraction. That's part of the reason that we wanted to dive in. And I think for me, like, I can be like, oh yeah, I wish it'd be cool if there's a way for them to be more accurate, or how am I going to adjust my headcanon? But I don't get too hung up on it. It's not a huge distraction for me. And I think a part of that is growing up with like superheroes, right? Like the adaptations into movies were never. We were lucky if they had any relationship with the way the characters looked. I've gone on years of accepting, like, well, like in movies, Batman, he dresses black. He's not gray and blue. It's gray and blue, damn it. So with superheroes, I've had a long time with it. But I think growing up with Star Wars in particular, it was like it looked this way in the movie. And it was a treat to ever have things accurate, because it was just such a different time. I remember being blown away for so many reasons when I've finally found and got the Kenner Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker action figure. But like, as a kid, I really thought it was impossible to make plastic blue. to give him an accurate lightsaber, because Empire Strikes Back, A New Hope, and it was yellow. Empire Strikes Back, it wasn't up his wrist anymore, but it was yellow. And then here comes Jedi Knight Luke, and the one I found's got a green lightsaber. That's possible. Amazing. So like, I think I maybe internalized that, like, things often don't look the same in different mediums. And when I was a kid, I think it was because people were like, yeah, the space movie, who cares? And obviously people do care now, and artists give a ton of thought to it and put a ton of work into it. And, when animation moves to live action, they make compromises or adaptation changes. So I think the changes now are from how are we going to translate from medium to medium? Everybody involved cares. We're not looking down our nose at this. I think when we were kids, I don't think the editors at Marvel were like, you gotta be sure to make this right. It was just, it happened, I think, for corporate products in particular, it's like, who cares if this space movie is exactly right?
Totally. Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. Now I'm thinking too. I think I was a little upset that the Baroness looked different in the comics than she did on the cartoon for G.I. Joe. Might have been my own issue.
Yeah, always changing. So we don't want to bury the lead. We're going to talk about some more kind of big picture conceptual approaches to this idea, but we don't want to bury the lead. A large part of the reason we're having this conversation is the Grand Inquisitor. So let's just talk about him. Ken, do you like his look in the Obi-Wan trailer? And if so, why or why not?
I'm going to go back even one step before that there, Joseph. Let's go back to Rebels. I was not convinced that he was the same species as Tion Madone. How about that twist? I didn't like the Rebels design. I thought it was inaccurate.
What did you think was inaccurate? Were his I don't know, flesh crevices not deep enough on his head?
Yeah. No, yes. No, I remember when he first emerged. I liked the design. He also kind of reminds me of the brother, right? In the Mortis arc, right? There's some of the connection there, right?
Yep.
And yeah, no, it was like the grooves, man. The groove is in the heart. Also, the groove is in Tion Madone's face. And I just like that. That's not the same species. Now, I always admit you're better with some of the vehicle names, species names, animal names. You're plugged into that a little bit more than I am. So I had to look it up. Like, is that the same species? There's people are saying it is. I'm not joking. I didn't think they captured it then. So all that to say, based on the maybe 3 seconds we've seen, I could say I'd like him the head be a little more sleeker, thinner, and taller. Yes, I actually really would. And I'm going to agree with that talking point going around that we need a design that, I'm also going to agree to the talking point that goes around that we need a design that allows for an actor to move, emote, fight. And Bruce Spence is amazing as Tion Madone. It's truly one of my favorite little scenes in Revenge of the Sith. I love Bruce Spence. I've mentioned before as the Mouth of Sauron in the Return of the King deleted scenes. I think he's great. I just don't see that character moving around, wiping out people with a lightsaber, spinning or otherwise. And that doesn't necessarily mean they had to change the design. But I seriously kind of, even though I do agree, I want it on record, Your Honor. I do wish the head was taller for Rupert Friend. We haven't seen him in action yet. Mm-hmm. And I want to withhold full judgment.
Yeah, I rewatched the Revenge of the Sith scene with Tion Madone and the other Powans in the background, as well as Ute, the other species that lives on Utapau. And yeah, man, every line is great. He didn't say. Every line is great. That actor is phenomenal. But yeah, he's a walking, talking, not a fighting, menacing character. Yeah. So there is that practical consideration to be made. We'll talk a little bit more about that. You know what I've found myself really realizing about the Grand Inquisitor is that I think there is sometimes we conflate the question of, is it accurate and do you like it?
And, that's actually true.
And I think maybe there's an assumption for people like, if it's not accurate, I don't like it. Right. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, I get it's an adaptation from the animated version, but then as soon as anybody says that about the Grand Inquisitor, you're like, yeah, but look at their tall, beautiful head of Tion Madone. It's already been in live action. That we have that same conversation about the Gruta. So all of that though is about accuracy and interpretation, and then the question for me is just aesthetically, do I like it? Do I think it's effective? And I think for me, with Grand Inquisitor, like, on paper, give him a taller head. I'd like that. Mm-hmm. That would be a little bit more accurate. And while we're there, make them face creases real deep.
Yeah.
Like Tion Madone deep. Maybe that happens when you're older. Maybe that's their version of wrinkling. I'm like, I have a lot of shadows now.
If that's the case, I am a Grand Inquisitor right now.
But for me, it's like, I do really like the appearance of the Grand Inquisitor in the trailer, and I think many people might disagree with me on this, and I totally understand this. I'm owning my opinion. He looks both terrifying and bonkers absurd, right? Mm-hmm. I like the pulpy side of Star Wars. I like the weird side. I like that tension of feeling so lost in the depth and the power and the fear and the hope and all the emotions. And then something that just kind of goes twang and reminds me, like, it's a weird B movie too.
Yeah.
And there's something about him where, like, I kind of look at him with the shorter head, and he kind of does look like, he looks like, an alien that might bother them on the Jetsons. Like, I mean, he looks a little B movie.
Yeah.
And I think some people might go, and that's why I don't like it. But for me, he looks effectively terrifying and weird. And I kind of like both at the same time. So for me, I kind of like that effect where you would see the Grand Inquisitor and kind of want to laugh at him, and then he would turn to you with what I have no doubt is going to be phenomenal performance by Rupert Friend, and then scare the crap out of you. Like, oh, were you about to laugh at me? Like, I think there might be some Grand Inquisitor scenes where remember when we thought that guy was funny instead of terrifying?
Yeah. But see, you're hitting on something that I love to kind of explore more. Again, on record, I'd like the head a little taller. On
Me
record.
too.
On record.
Official. Yeah. Team tall head over
Team
here.
Tall head. But my highlight is his words, which are chilling and set a tone. I'm focusing on that. And again, we're not saying we're doing it right. You're doing it wrong. It just that's why I wasn't paying attention to that as much. And I also had a conversation with a friend of mine who's a Star Wars fan, but does not engage anymore with public conversations on shows or otherwise with Star Wars, probably better for it. And he was texting, he goes, I love the trailer. He goes, man, those what are they called? Inquisitors? Silly looking, man. And including, by the way, the fifth brother I cannot wait to see Sung Kang as the fifth brother, but it looks a little different. It's not accurate to the show if you're going with that as well. And I was like, yeah, I understand. I even had the Inquisitor designs I've grown to love more than I thought I would, even going back to Rebels season 1, or even when some of they pop up in the comics. Like some of them are almost comical. They are B-movie, like Ninth Sisters, this huge, creature with a species that's Grumgar's species.
Yeah, Duwatan.
Thank you. See, you win that round. It's not my favorite design, but also I've just come to accept that these Inquisitors are their own kind of little design world. So he was just like, I don't know, man, it's just silly. I'm not looking forward to these Inquisitors. They just look silly. So I don't know. All that to say, I think you're right about you can acknowledge one side, but if it works for you, case in point, White Walkers, as it's described in the book, Game of Thrones, the Song of Ice and Fire, way different than they are in the show. They are chilling to me in the show. And I'm not there for those arguments. Well, in the show, they're actually more icy and beautiful and they have the length. Yeah. The image that was on screen scared me. It's why I got hooked into the show. 30 seconds in, I was like, I'm not familiar with these books, but I'm scared about this. I love this. So you're right. At the end of the day, yeah, Ahsoka looks different, but I like that different. That might just be the end deciding point.
Yeah. I think it'll be really, really interesting to see if the weight of the acting takes away from anybody who feels like he looks a little silly. And I think that's what I'm saying is I do think he looks a little silly, but I'm kind of okay with that. I think Palpatine looks a little silly. Like he's a dark wizard in a robe,
Sorry, I've been. We may have had a discussion. There was an older generation Star Wars fan I was talking to one time, and we're talking 15 years older than me. And he's like, when Palpatine shows up in Return of the Jedi, I almost stood up in the theater and was like, boo. He's like, that's not even the vision I had. Empire Strikes Back, it is something even different. Even though I would say it looks it's a cowl and an old person, right? He was like that. It was so comical to me. It was not the Emperor I had been envisioning for a long time. It wasn't accurate to the standards I'd set.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's one of the reasons I love Palpatine is because he is one of the aesthetics that is this is space fantasy. He is an evil wizard with a wrinkly face and danger fingers, the cane and the voice and he's over the top. And then at the same time, everything he represents is so meaningful and powerful. So you get the fun and the depth at the same time. And it's one of the things I come to Star Wars for. I can go places that are just silly and fun, and I can go to places that are just deep and serious and weighty. And Star Wars does both at the same time, and it gives it this tension. And there are different moments that work for different fans, and sometimes when they're combined, it doesn't work for anybody.
Yeah.
But there are moments where it works for me, and I think the Grand Inquisitor is one of those moments.
Yeah, again, 3 seconds, and I'm not just saying that to be snarky, but 3 seconds of footage. Does 1 second of it kind of make him look like he's from Mars Attacks, like in a Tim Burton movie? Yeah. But let's just see. He's also terrifying with those words. I just want to. The jury's out for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I look forward to revisiting the Grand Inquisitor specific discussion
Yeah.
once he is on screen and terrifying people in full action. I mean, Inquisitors have had a long road, right? I mean, the helicopter blades have been discussed about the level of cool versus silly, right?
And I'm on the silly side, but can't wait. I'd love to see. I'd love to see him fly in live action.
It might be really terrifying. Another round of comparing something to Mary Poppins in Star Wars, right?
I mean, you guys thought brightly colored scooters were a problem. Wait till the general public sees someone fly with a lightsaber.
It is gonna be an event in Star Wars land. Okay, so we're gonna talk about some conceptual stuff as well as get into some more specifics. How do you feel about this idea that stylized animation characters, locations, even weapons and vehicles sometimes should actually not be exactly the same in live action? There's lots of quotes from Filoni talking about the Darksaber in particular. Like, that's the stylized. Like, I know you're adapting it from that source and it's its only existing source, but when we bring it into live action, it should be different because everything in Clone Wars is stylized. And then that, of course, extends to a lot of the character designs as well to bring them into the quote unquote live action real world. How do you feel about that theory?
I think I'll start with the different just animation styles themselves. And I think I really grew to love that, though sometimes I maybe wish they were all in the same ballpark, but Clone Wars / Bad Batch, Rebels, Resistance, not counting the micro shows here, but even Forces of Destiny has a different look. And the Star Wars Adventures ones on Star Wars Kids, sometimes they seem far apart, but I've grown to embrace it. That there is Clone Wars Obi-Wan, there's Resistance Poe, Rebels Maul. And so to let flowing into the concept of live action, I kind of like it. It leads to different figures. It leads to different versions of our favorite characters. And this is not a one-to-one kind of comparison, but I'd like to mention before, Douglas Adams believed anytime Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was told in a different medium, it needed to be different, story-wise, plot-wise. Including him adding the angle of Arthur Dent and Trillian being in a romantic relationship in the movie version before, then of course he passes away before it comes out. That came from him. He just felt, no, it's a different medium. It works differently for radio, for books, for a Commodore 64 game that I played. It should be a little different from time to time. So I kind of like that energy for design. Everyone's making the jokes about, we've even referenced it here about Dooku's face in Clone Wars versus Christopher Lee's face. It's just kind of the way it should be. You do want to fight for a little bit, of accuracy. Again, the fifth brother, but we got this wonderful performer, Sung Kang. So I don't want to hide his face any more than he already is in that design. So I'm open to what they're going to present to us. So I just kind of like the energy that it's a different medium. Let's bring a different kind of art style to it.
Yeah, I really like that approach. To me, that makes sense of like, if everything has been designed to fit this aesthetic, then it should be redesigned to fit this other aesthetic. And I don't mean like totally change what it is, but I think it's more about like interpretation. I even think about some of the artwork in the Star Wars comics. Like, I kind of like it when it's a little bit more stylized, particularly like there's a run in the Marvel Star Wars where it's a lot of like the real photorealistic almost, that style where you can like say like, that this panel of Han, I know which promo shot that is, or I know what shot from the film it, and again, as always, things are taste-based. So no offense to that artist or no offense to people who prefer that. But as an example, I don't like it being as photorealistic. It's the comic book medium. So I'd rather it be a little stylized. I still want to when I open it, I want to have no doubt that's Luke Skywalker I'm looking at. But I also want it to be like a comic book Luke Skywalker that's in the overall style of this artist, this human that it's passing through. I
like that as an example. The Leia comic run, the early one, the 5-issue run, which we meet Evan Verlaine and everything. It's very comic, like it's a comic book style, classic style to me. Versus there's some shots that are Carrie Fisher in the Poe Dameron arc. It's just so photorealistic that it actually, that one in that issue 14 I always talk about, it's an emotional gut punch because I'm staring at Carrie Fisher after she passed away in that arc. But I like that. Dr. Aphra, she's been around for so long now, thank God, such a great character, but a lot of different, she looks different from some runs to other runs to me, depending on who the artist is. And I enjoy all of them there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that is a great point about Hitchhikers too, about like things should kind of adapt a little bit medium to medium. And then I think there is a little bit of, I don't know, be careful what you wish for, maybe.
Mm.
Like with the Grand Inquisitor, like, yep, already established on screen as well. Team taller head, that would have been great if it worked.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously, we'll talk about the reasons that it might not have. But I wouldn't want the Grand Inquisitor to look exactly like he does in animation. The same way, like if we meet live action Ezra, I don't want him in a skin tight suit that he had in animation because they didn't want to have the extra expensive flowing clothes. So everybody's clothes are skin
Yeah.
tight, you
Yeah.
know? I don't need Ezra to be in a skin tight jumpsuit because that was the style in reality of that animation. You know, I want it to adapt in, because I guess my point is there's some things that you could take from the animation that like we would not want them that way in live action.
Yeah. And Christopher Lee's jawline. Dooku's jawline.
I'm having fun nightmares thinking about that great image of his photorealistic head shaped with Clone Wars proportions. All right. So for yourself then, when they do make these changes, how do you reconcile a change in a species that isn't just being, adapted from animation, but a species that's already been established in live action, in particular Togrutas like Ahsoka and Powns like the Grand Inquisitor? How do you deal with that?
I start here. Do you remember the old Facebook layouts? No. Remember when everyone would just lose their minds because Facebook changed their interface? I don't remember what the old ones look like. This is where I try to, I don't want to sound dismissive or just laissez-faire towards the overall conversation. With the Ahsoka one, it just fades in the background for me. It really does, and I just focus on what's there in front of me. And I always joke I'm a simple guy. I like pop rock. Give me 3 chords and the truth. I'm not here for prog rock and hitting all the notes. That's why I'm not a giant Sting fan either. I just like rock and roll, baby. So it just becomes what the standard is for me. I do want them to hit that level of accuracy. We are going to be talking about that more, but I just think, going to the Grand Inquisitor, he doesn't have like a head of hair and he's orange.
Right.
They're painting with the same paints here on the board. It's just a little different. And so I just kind of give them that room again. If I'm being honest.
Yeah. I think for me, there's I accept the real world of, some of the examples in these cases like Shakti and Tion Madan. I accept that those are characters who play a conversational role. They're sitting and standing and walking or maybe posing with the lightsaber, but they're not doing huge action. They aren't one of the main characters, so they are supporting a ton of the scene with their face. Tion Madan does, but he's slowly walking and talking. Yeah. He's not terrifyingly hunting people down. And then also for me, there's the I'm not I don't have a ton of on-screen experience as an actor. I have a massive ton of experience as an actor for the stage, and actor comfort is a factor, right? When you have to wear something that is physically painful, that is a factor, right? And I wonder, if some of this is like, how much can we put on Rupert Friend's head? From how much we want to show his face, how much we want him to be mobile, but also like physical comfort, Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, look, to be honest, forget good old Tion, but like Inquisitor's face, the design of the face, it's not human. Like it's the cheeks are longer. The nose is longer. Everything's kind of longer. You can't stretch out this guy's face much more, I don't think. So, and as far as, again, you go to the example of Bruce Spence, it's beautiful. It's beautiful design. He could barely move his head.
He's got that. He does have that. The coat is a little head holder, right? Yeah, little head cozy.
He's Clooney Batman. He's just like, and Shakti wasn't fighting. You know what I mean? Like we don't have a ton with Shakti, and a lot of things in those films, are probably more digitally enhanced than we want to admit or think. Looking back, though, again, some are more practical than we give them credit for too. So,
yeah. And I mean, for me, one of the fun things about Star Wars is you don't want to be doing it all the time, but headcanon can be fun, right? We've seen so much of this in books and comics, and where people are kind of like, well, it turns out there's a reason for that. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it really adds a lot. I think the headcanon that Leia's, which has actually showed up in some written materials now, of that that Leia's memories of her mother are Force visions of her
Mhm.
youth, not that Padme. Like that's rich and beautiful,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So sometimes they're great. So for me, like some of the things is like, yeah, maybe not every member of the species looks exactly the same. Maybe travel affects them. You know,
Yeah.
do emotions affect Togruta Montrals? You know,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Does time travel affect them? You know.
Yeah, world between worlds. Yeah, look, I think I've seen some wonderful thoughts and ideas and headcanon stuff going around, and I can get behind that stuff too. To your original question of how can I reconcile some of these changes, it could be that, and I'm not going to say it as flippantly as Ahsoka got a haircut because those are part of her actual body, but you know what I mean. Like things could happen. Painful. Yeah, who knows what happened out there on her missions, and I think there's always room for storytelling opportunities again because they're all so close enough. They're close enough, even when they're different. Again, the Grand Inquisitor does look different, but he's close enough. He doesn't have a buzz cut. He doesn't look like John Cena. He's and I love Cena, but like, it's there. I want to see what they're going to do with that style.
Yeah, exactly. So in other genre stories, there are sometimes wild divergences in appearances. For example, the Klingons in Star Trek. If you're not a big Star Trek fan in the original series, the Klingons are people who have kind of pointy beards. And then they want to amp up for the films, and they become the Klingons that we know with the really big, bony, structured heads. And then even in the Star Trek Discovery, the first season, there's another revamping of Klingons. And in the history of Star Trek, there's everything from, books having convoluted, reasoning to there's a great episode of Deep Space Nine where the character Worf just makes a joke about the way Klingons used to look in the original series and just says, we don't speak of that. And it's just handled with just a joke. So my point is Star Wars is not alone in this. And in fact, I think I saw a meme of, Star Trek fans being like, oh, are there some differences? I weep in Klingon that the Grand Inquisitor's head is not high enough. Do you have a different attitude towards Star Wars than other properties?
I do. I actually really do. And this is why I get the conversations in Star Wars, but I love that you brought up Star Trek stuff. There's other things out there, some of those live action G.I. Joe movies. I was really looking forward to seeing what they could do with this franchise. And I think they needed to modernize some of the storytelling in it, but some of the designs, the early Cobra Commander stuff didn't work for me. I understood why they explained why they wanted to change the look of him. It just didn't work for me. So, and I hope quite frankly, I hope they never end up making those live action Robotech movies that have been rumored for years with different people behind them. Because I have some amazingly high expectations of what my Robotech characters need to look like on screen. And I just almost don't want to deal with that. House of the Dragon needs to be its own thing, but I want it to feel like the same world I've lived in on HBO since 2011. Same with some of the new Lord of the Rings stuff coming up. So I get it. It's property by property for me, but Star Wars is kind of built on itself, kind of creates its own high standards. It all has to kind of feel the same to me. Again, that goes back to why I think it all kind of feels the same. The edges might look a little different, but we are so pulled in by that lived in world by the original trilogy, or whenever you get into Star Wars, I understand the need for accuracy and understand some of the complaints, for that.
Yeah, I think I think the one that really does hit me is when I've seen people tweeting about like they have an emotional investment in a narrative thing that like the Togruta's Montral Leku grow with age. That's an idea, right?
It's an idea.
So people have made a connection with an idea. It's not just an aesthetic thing, and I really appreciate that, and I really understand that. And I want that kind of continuity too, right?
Yeah.
If Obi-Wan's lightsaber in Obi-Wan Kenobi just kind of looked real different just cause, I would be really annoyed.
Yeah.
But in general, I think when characters change a little bit from medium to medium, adaptation to adaptation, I'm more forgiving for Star Wars because I do approach it as a myth. That is a big part of my fandom, is that I get hung up on specific canon things. If there's an idea that's introduced, I really want it followed through, or I don't want it, devalued. But I always approach Star Wars as these are stories being told. And whoever is saying to me a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I pretty much trust that storyteller. But I kind of feel like maybe one person sat me down and told me the Skywalker saga, and this other storyteller is telling me the tale of the Mandalorian, right? And for me, because I'm looking at it from that sort of storytelling frame, from that mythic frame, it makes sense to me that the visions might differ, that there might be a little bit, that the soul is the same, but the details shift just a little, including the appearance. I think that makes me way more accepting of changes in Star Wars. Whereas like Star Trek has some wild stuff in it, right? I mean, floating Abraham Lincoln heads, and look, like there's a ton of wild stuff in Star Trek, and there always has been. But it is this vision of this could be our future, right? Mm-hmm. So then when like, this entire species has a different head, you almost do want to like, what happened? It can be a space anomaly, but do tell me what happened, you know? Whereas Star Wars, I feel like this is a different chapter. This is a different part of the myth, is more the way I feel. And I understand that does not work for everyone, but that's the way I feel. Yeah, no, I think that generally works for me. I really like what you're saying though about like the Montreal's kind of representing part of the story, not just the character. And that's where, I keep saying I don't want to be dismissive. That's where I'm really connecting with a lot of people who I talked to some of the Ahsoka fans, and it wasn't just the look, it was like what it means. And we are so behind that here at ForceCenter, and I agree with that. I just think of even in season 1 of Mando, of some of the, well, wait a minute, what's going on with these Mandos and the way and the masks? And it allowed us to explore that a little bit more, and they got there. And I think that's not necessarily one-to-one comparison to physical appearance. Mando season 1 put an idea out there. Yeah, I'm more interested to follow that journey and see where Star Wars wants to take some of that stuff, and what does that mean? What could it mean for Ahsoka for that, if they want to choose to explain the difference? Yeah, and every once in a while it ends up being a storytelling gift. Maybe this time it isn't, because it's about the practical, ability to move. And I love the Star Trek stuff you say, because it's I am a casual Star Trek fan over the years, but definitely I have an uneducated view on the history of it. I've always looked at that as a franchise got a chance to literally come back from the dead, right? And the movies were a rebirth in a different era with a different budget, different goals. And Wrath of Khan introduced me to Star Trek. I'd seen the shows, the reruns are kind of a memory. My dad would watch them in syndication, but Wrath of Khan was my introduction to Star Trek. So I love that. And I love the version. I didn't worry about it because I saw that, and it was like, oh, well, you just imagine if Star Wars came out in 1968 as a weekly television show, and Jabba is a man in a suit that looks like Sid and Marty Krofft designed him. Like, imagine George going, hey, that was Dad. I get a chance to reboot this all again for a different time, different era. That's how I look at the Star Trek one. Yeah, Wrath of Khan is a great entry into Star Trek. Long story there too. Khan says he met Chekhov, which he didn't, with the line, "I never forget a face," and he didn't meet Chekhov in the episode Space Seed, where Khan was introduced. So even then, there's always something. No matter what you're a fan of, there's always something to gnash your teeth about. Absolutely, Ricardo Montalban looked a little different from the show to the movie, I would say. Yes, there were some changes in general chest dynamics, I would say. Anyway, maybe we'll talk about Wrath of Khan sometime, one of my very favorites. So because the tone of Star Wars discussion online has been heated a lot, do you think it is harder for us to just joke about these kinds of surface details? Because, like we're saying, we want to have a lot of respect for some of the Ahsoka stuff, which really, it is about how people have connected to the character and the idea, and other Togruta characters and the storytelling and all that. But like with Grand Inquisitor at this point, there is there's a level of fun to it, but there's also a level of, it can be hard online to understand, like, are people just kind of tweeting off the cuff, or are people really mad, and that makes it kind of harder. We're joking around and trying to be respectful at the same time. Do you think it's harder to just joke around right now? It is, and this is something I come back to a lot. It's 100% harder. I constantly struggle with it. I feel sometimes I've lost my Star Wars sense of humor, which is it shouldn't be, because it's part of the reason my love for Star Wars grew, is those inside jokes and all those things. And look, also, I think the Grand Inquisitor, as seen in that trailer, looks like an uncooked dumpling. And but I still want to see him in action.
This came up in our live chat recently, our first ever live Q&A in ForceCenter. Our good pal Brian Ward, designer extraordinaire, was like, look, he said in comments, I actually love the somehow Palpatine came back line. I love that Rise of Skywalker. I still love making jokes about it. And he has some great memes that go out there. Some of them go viral of somehow blank came back. And I read that comment because I was like, I started to get too serious about it. I was like, does Brian Ward hate this? I love Brian. Brian's our pal. And it was like, so I have to remind myself to pull back and allow my my other friend to go, God, Inquisitors look silly. That's okay. It's okay. This is a silly world, and I love celebrating all of it.
Yeah, I think I'm in that same place of, this is definitely a time you're alive thing. Like in 2003, if somebody made a joke about stormtroopers always missing, I didn't once for a second think that person hates the original trilogy.
Right. Yes.
Yes. But as soon as the prequels came out, any joke about the prequels from people my own age at the time were definitely if we're making a joke about Anakin and sand, it is further evidence that this is bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like there's so many great prequel memes from people who love prequels, but I wasn't exposed to that until internet, where people like, love to, what is the actual proper response to hello there and that kind of thing. All those great memes. But going then into the sequel era in the modern version of social media, where tone is very hard to convey, where sometimes people are both angry and making a joke, or just making a joke out of a sense of fun, and it's all so hard to navigate, and you don't know, if somebody is making a joke about the sequel trilogy, is it just in good faith fun, or is it evidence that, this laundry list of sins? That's so hard to navigate.
It is, yeah, in a lot of different ways. Even sides of my humor. Humor should always grow and change, and I've talked about that too. But even sometimes, yeah, it's just you got to be careful. And by the way, you should be careful. But to translate it to Star Wars, you're so right. Sometimes, it just seems like an opening statement of someone who's going to tear down the film you love, and maybe it's not, and that's just not fair of me to be like, how dare you make that joke? Yeah.
I would love to make somehow Palpatine return jokes. I have no problem with Palpatine returning. I kind of think that there was probably a more elegant way to say that, to not open it up to memification. But also it feels like I kind of like that line being in Rise of Skywalker, because there are a lot of prequel lines like that of like, for me, that could have been maybe phrased in a more elegant way. And I both want to poke fun at it and I love it. And I don't want to poke fun at it and have it turn into I get 1,000 replies that are saying, yep, Rise of Skywalker sucks, because that's not my point. Yeah. And I think a great example of this that I did just want to be sure to shout out, because it's so a part of the conversation we had, the person, I apologize, I did not remember to look up who it was, but the person made that fun Cad Bane video of here are the different alterations of what Cad Bane might have looked like in live action. And the person was doing it from a place of fun, and then got clickbaited into an article who said the fan has fixed it. And then a bunch of people got mad. It's such a perfect example of what we're talking about, where it's, if you're putting something out there on social media, you got to be like super crystal clear. And even then someone might take it as you're not just having fun or what ifing, you are criticizing.
Yeah, well, sorry, this goes into this, but like I've always had that war with fan edits or fan films, which is often not fair of me, where some people just want to make things because they have a passion for Star Wars. They know they're not going to get it in theater. They want to take some friends on a weekend and shoot something. And from that starting point, it turns into, this is so much better. Rey should have had 19 Force Ghosts helping her. And then I get and then it starts this other discussion. At the end of the day, someone's like, I just made a fan edit because I like Star Wars, and it's like it's case by case basis. And that's where I'm speaking to myself if I'm constantly struggling with this in this era. And the Grand Inquisitor thing kind of flows into that. It is look a little weird. He does look, like I said, an uncooked dumpling, but I don't want that to take away from what my hope and love for the series.
Yeah, well, maybe there's a little bit of hope here, because there's something about the Grand Inquisitor thing where I'm feeling like I kind of like it. I'm very excited to see how it plays out. I think once the character is, really emoting and hunting, I think people are going to come around to it more, because I think he's going to be terrifying. And then at the same time, it's really fun that we're wrestling with how tall should the mean spaceman's head be, and I want to have a sense of humor about it too. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, again, his lines of dialogue are part of my favorite things I've seen so far, or heard so far, I should say. So,
absolutely great. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get into a few more of the specifics and talk about different appearance changes that we wrestled with or didn't at all. We'll be back in a moment. And we are back to continue our discussion of changing appearances in Star Wars. Not being a master of disguise, although I'd be happy to see that in Star Wars too. But changes from adaptation to adaptation and medium to medium. Ken, how do you feel about the live action look of some of the other big ones? We talked about Grand Inquisitor a lot, but how do you feel personally about Ahsoka, Cad Bane, Black Chrysanthemum?
Really love the Black Chrysanthemum one. That might be the most accurate one yet, right?
The only Chrysanthemum, adaptation criticism that I've seen so far is the action figure, where it looks like he's just really not been eaten well.
Yeah. I love the Cad Bane one, including the changes, smaller hat, whatever you want to throw at me. Love the Cad Bane one. I thought that was, even though we've seen there again as example of, we've seen Duros in live action, right?
Mm-hmm.
George will remind you. I just thought it really worked where it retained the essence of being an animated character, right? It almost looked like animation come to life, but still worked in this very realistic environment. So I really love those ones. The Ahsoka one, I think in the end of the day, becomes a big win for me, only because I think the way it's presented, I really think Rosario Dawson kind of feels, acts, and moves like the character. I know some people have said, the voices, everything's kind of throws them off. I think at the end of the day, I really think there was some homework in how to make that work. So then it all kind of comes together to where the design does feel an accurate depiction of Ahsoka in this time in her life for me.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement across the board. Chrysanthemum is great. I really love Cad Bane. Cad Bane feels like, in some ways to me, like the perfect, let's retain the spirit of this character from the animation while making some proportion changes that make sense and are good for the performer. And I mean, absolutely, I keep calling him nightmare fuel. It is partially just because he looks so alien, but so sort of believable, and that the larger emphasis on those teeth and that lip curl, right? It just gets all the sort of the ferocity of that character across. So I love that Cad Bane is a great, to me, adaptation from the animation. And then with Ahsoka, I just kind of feel like I am grateful to have the character in live action. I'm grateful to have the character be moving and flowing. And if that meant needing to kind of find a way to compromise a little bit in some ways, that's fine for me. Ultimately, again, with all due respect to people who are bothered by it. But I also feel like for me, the performance, and in particular, the body language of Ahsoka is really, really good. The style of fighting, I remember even in the Jedi episode where obviously she is not going to do the level of athletics that Ahsoka does in the Clone Wars, because that would literally break a human's legs into some of the poses. And I say that as somebody whose wife is a modern dancer and has watched a lot of dance. Humans can't do some of the things that Ahsoka does in the Clone Wars. But it's still there. It's there's that moment where she kind of does the foot leap off the wall for one of her lightsaber strikes in the Jedi episode of Mandalorian. There's that hand gesture that she does in her appearance in Book of Boba Fett that is straight out of the Clone Wars. So I feel like there's so much attention to the body language. There's so much love for the character that I ultimately am on board.
Yeah, absolutely.
How would you feel if they continue to adapt her head and it starts to change from show to show? Would you be happy if it got a little bit if her Montreal Leku were a little bit more accurate, or we were like, just keep it the same?
No, I actually wouldn't mind that at all. If they find a way to make it practical, because I forget some of the talking points around it, but what they kind of realized in production, maybe production, that hey, the design, the longer Montreals aren't going to work. I can't find any quotes on it in my brain right now, but you know what I'm talking about.
I mean, they talked about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So if they were to find a way, like, hey, upon more time, things got better, we found a way to make it work. Yeah, absolutely. I'd be open to it.
Awesome. We're open to Ahsoka changes. Big news. So in the movies alone, we've had multiple interpretations of Yoda. Where do you land on original The Phantom Menace puppet Yoda? Are you a fan? Do you have nightmares? Where are you at with the puppet Yoda from Phantom Menace?
I miss him. He was great. I mean, his mouth didn't always move when he was talking. He was a little bloated, like he had too much salt down at Dex's Diner, but he was younger. No, I actually like it. And I told the story. If it wasn't very recently, within the last couple of years, that I finally got the DVD. The upgraded ones, right? And the whole the DVD set. I had the original DVDs, Blu-ray, I should say Blu-rays, and I had the original DVDs. And I remember telling you, I was like, I totally forgot that they redid Phantom Menace Yoda. I still have the puppet version. I was still watching the puppet version years into ForceCenter, and just forgot. I know, obviously, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, it's different. I kind of like them because of that. Only because it's maybe a little bit of a nostalgia connection to Empire Strikes Back, but. I like the updates. I like technology changing it, and then a little bit more consistency is fine with me.
Yeah. I mean, I think that even though they were really, really went to all this great work in Last Jedi to get kind of original Yoda back, he still looks a little different to me, and I feel like it's fine. It's time, it's lighting, it's so many things going on, and the CGI Yoda versus the puppet Yoda in the prequels, like those are also some swings, right? I mean, there's no denying that. I love every moment of Yoda in the prequels, and he's CGI, and but then there's also we're talking about live action, but then Clone Wars, Rebels, he's real weird.
Yes, he is.
It's a real big swing on Yoda. But I'm so fascinated by puppet Yoda because I was thrilled to just that Yoda was in it. The puppet was never as sort of magical as the Empire Strikes Back puppet to me. He always looked a little it's like he wasn't that much younger, but they really wanted to show it. But there's something about that Phantom Menace puppet Yoda always looks like he's trying to pretend he's younger than he is, like he's had some work done or something.
Which is his choice to make, but yes, it was a little different. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, it
aging happens fast, kids. Trust me. You'll look in the mirror one day and go, "Oh, I am my age." But yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, there's just something about him. He always looks a little shocked. I mean, he's shocked a lot. By Qui-Gon in Phantom Menace, but there is this he's got this vibe like he's your hip grandpa who's trying to use current lingo, right? He's like 6 years too late. He's trying to go oh, you gonna Netflix and chill?
Careful, that's dangerous territory. I just was reminded this weekend of one of my favorite Kids in the Hall sketches that he's hip, he's cool, he's 45. And I had a real emotional breakdown realizing I'm there. Oh, my God.
It happens to all of us, including the people who made that sketch, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm also fascinated with Puppet Yoda just because I wonder if there's going to be a point where he's going to, if younger people grow up and they watch, what do you mean own a disc of Star Wars that's on Disney Plus? Why would I ever own a disc? And if there's going to be articles 10 years from now of shocking, people discover Yoda, there was a puppet of Yoda in the Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
He might slip into the cracks of history.
Yeah.
So talking about overall changing appearances. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have more Yoda?
No, I love having this conversation. 2022 about Puppet Yoda from '99. It's great. I love it. It's such a fun thing.
Good times, old Puppet Yoda, old young Puppet Yoda. So let's talk about the big picture animation style, because there's obviously incredibly different styles of animation in some of the animated shows. Did the animation style of Clone Wars, Rebels, or Resistance ever bother you? And if so, how did you get past it?
Clone Wars did. Clone Wars did at the beginning, but they've made these giant leaps to get to where they are in season 7, which is just breathtaking. It's jaw dropping. the stuff they accomplished in season 7 of Clone Wars.
Mhm.
So you don't get there without that starting point, and those blocky, silly looking designs, which turned a lot of people off. And it didn't turn me off. You know, the Tartakovsky ones were their own thing, and in such a classic kind of 2D style. So I think I had a little bit of, well, why couldn't we just continue that? And you go back and watch that Clone Wars movie now. It looks a little old, looks a little basic, but it all has faded in the background, you know, for that one there. That one did. Resistance, I think, is just gorgeous. And I kind of wouldn't mind more shows to be in that style. And Rebels stands out to me. It's its own kind of thing we can discuss. But yeah, the Clone Wars is the ones that I had the biggest problem with at first.
Yeah, I think the 2D Clone Wars got me past any bumps I would have because it was like so stylized, right? Like Kenobi's got the big beard. Dooku is very stylized there. So I think I kind of accepted the 3D because it's like, well, look, it's Lucas and he's gonna play with tech, and I got kind of gently brought to just the overall style of like faces and bodies in stylized look from the 2D to the 3D. Not that there aren't differences, but they're like, we're not trying to be photorealistic, you know? So that never bothered me. And then, the technology just keeps getting better and better. And at this point, Bad Batch is just bonkers beautiful every episode. Totally agree on Resistance. That was many things I loved about that show, but just the look. It's kind of, for me, kind of perfect for Star Wars. That cell animation is great stuff. I struggled with Rebels. In particular, like I understand the let's kind of, instead of cherry picking Macquarie, let's kind of go with the overall aesthetic as Macquarie, right?
Yeah.
But as a part of that, the lightsabers being thinner, that will never be my favorite. It's just one of those little things that for me, I just kind of it always makes me feel like I do in Photoshop when I make an adjustment. That's a little bit too much in the wrong way. And there's a part of me that always just like wants to go in and find the tool and just widen the lightsabers a little bit. Even though I totally understand the visual and style language for it, it's just one of those little things that like I have to let go of. I have to go, that's not my favorite, but I don't want to let it ruin all the greatness for me. So I'm going to try to let it go, you know?
No, it stands out more than any of them. I think perhaps I braced it early. It's very much its own thing. You know, Vader is different. It's the classic Macquarie design, right? It is that, and so I think I love that. I love the homage. I don't know, like I don't know if I'd rather have a show look like Resistance than Rebels, but Rebels is great. It's beautiful. There again, Joseph, I'm trying to pre-defend myself, lest someone think I don't love Rebels. Rebels has some of my absolute favorite Star Wars storytelling in it. So I guess, do you feel at all? Is that too baked in nostalgia? It's a dangerous line to cross sometimes, where it's too much like it's the postcards you used to collect as a kid. Whereas, like, say, Book of Boba Fett is like, hey, remember that one shot of the Tusken Raider kind of thing? We're doing that, but it's totally different. It's live action. Like, I don't know.
No, I think it's just totally subjective. I think that I think as a guiding principle to like, look, we're striking out. We're making this new animation, kind of some of the first storytelling that people are seeing from Disney, Lucasfilm. Let's make this strong choice that is both old and new, right? Because it's based in those Macquarie art style across the board, but that's kind of new for live action. So it is the old and new at once. I kind of love the general Macquarie mission statement. It's just this totally subjective personal thing that it makes the lightsabers feel a little less substantive to me. And lightsabers change all the time too. I mean, that's another thing we talk about in films. The depth of the blue in the Skywalker blade changes. Whether or not it has a point or is rounded changes in the live action film. So, lightsabers changing is not totally unique to animated. But it's the lightsabers. It's nothing else. It's just the lightsabers for me. How about you? Do you think it was leaning into nostalgia or going to the Macquarie well too deeply?
I don't think it was. for me personally, but I can understand if it's how I've described the Book of Boba Fett's style as stubborn, which I've said before on and off air to people. Like, I think Rebels is like, you called it a mission statement. Excellent way to look at it. Here's what we're doing. We're paying homage to this thing. And, I can understand if that's too much for some people. Because again, it was very different at the beginning. You mentioned lightsabers. I mentioned Vader, but it was very different. Even the stormtroopers had a different feel and look, but it's stormtroopers, right? Again, going back to my earlier statement, it's on the same playing field.
Yeah.
Stormtroopers didn't have like triangle heads and stuff like that. It was the stormtroopers we love. And I think I love the spirit of it. And other people might not, again, if you're a prequel kid, you might not care about the McQuarrie stuff as much as we do. I don't know that answer. I can only go from my perspective. I think it was just right, but I understand if it was too much.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the palette in those main characters being, in general, much brighter than sometimes the palette of Star Wars is for main characters. That was a big swing too. You're
funny you mentioned that. I had a bigger problem with the colors, and I think I've even said that on old either ForceCenters or maybe again the Jedi Alliance days where Maud and I didn't initially take to the shows as we think. I think we both eventually got with the show. I brought up the colors, so there are colors, scooters, space punks. But I remember thinking, I don't know. I got it was a quote unquote kids show, and you're going a little different design and aesthetic. But I just felt even the crew, the Ghost, wouldn't fit into Hoth Base. And Echo Base, you know what I mean? And I don't know if I agree with myself now, but I think that it stood out. It took that kind of big swing.
Yeah. I think the thing for me is just, it was kind of a big swing, but it all worked out. And there are people whose entry point to Star Wars is Rebels, and they are probably like, what are you talking about? Yeah. This is absolutely Star Wars to me because it's the first Star Wars. So I didn't wrestle with that. Maybe people had the opposite of like, has anyone in Hoth Echo Base ever heard of colors?
Right.
Get some orange in there, Rican. Come on,
Yeah.
It is all about where you start, and I think now that palette is there, I like seeing it in other places as well.
Yeah. Look, I had a conversation at a gathering this weekend with two younger generation Star Wars fans, and one was a Star Wars fan, and she was trying to say, she was like, this is my roommate, and I try to introduce her to Star Wars, and she's not taken to it. And one of the reasons I find I can't share the original trilogy with my generation first. Mm-hmm. And of course, why? I wasn't like, why? I was like, oh, why? And she's like, well, it just looks so bad. I'm like, I guess, it was made in, was made in a different time. So
it was made in a different time with different technology. Yeah, no, I mean, and when you're trying to bring people in, you got to do what you can to bring them in. Yeah. I think for me, the end of the day, my ultimate lightsaber test is, I want to share and be honest that sometimes there's something that on a subjective level just bugs me. But when I think about that Kenobi and Maul fight, which is one of my favorite scenes in Star Wars, I am always so busy engaging with the scene and the characters, and Obi-Wan changing stances is one of my favorite moments in Star Wars. And I don't think about, my lightsaber pedantry at all. I think about that scene, and that's kind of like the test for me is, hey, it's fine to have different opinions about surface things. Is my opinion about a surface thing holding me back from enjoying what's there? And like, that's my Jedi trial when it comes to lightsabers and Rebels. So like, nope, doesn't hold me back. Rewatch Trial of the Darksaber during Book of Boba Fett. It didn't hold me back at all,
Yeah, exactly.
So is there a change or a different style of a character or anything in all of Star Wars storytelling that has shifted around that you love, that you actually like this different interpretation?
I'll be honest, I kind of struggle to find a specific answer here. Can I answer Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo?
I think that's valid.
There's something about that too. I'm trying to think though. This is a gut reaction answer to me. And I tell you what, I rewatched the live action Cad Bane intro. I rewatched it like 10 times on just that sequence because I loved it so much. Everything about it, the Western vibe, the music, the bad guy comes into town, all those reasons. But the voice, Corey Burton doing the voice, loved it. I loved it. And that's why also that stuff broke off about the differences and everything. I wasn't there for those conversations because I really liked that live action version of this character I've always loved in animation.
I think that is a great answer. For me, I'm going to do a little bit of celebrating Rebels as well. I love Vader in Rebels. Um, Clearly a stylized take, right? With the much more arched eyes, and the sharper nose. It's clearly like, to me, it's like the heart of like, yeah, of course that is not one-to-one screen Vader. It's the Vader at the very end of Clone Wars is much closer to screen Vader, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though Clone Wars is very stylized, that's clearly stylized. But like Vader in Rebels almost looks to me like a terrified rebel escaped Vader, and they're trying to describe what this monster looks like, right? He looks more like the nightmare that somebody has of Vader, and I love it.
It's a witness statement.
It is. It's like, can you describe that? His eyes are so sharp and there's a very pointy nose. And like, ooh, is Vader's nose pointy?
As someone who took witness statements for 17 years, they are never accurate. So I love this description. So your grandma was wearing a green dress. Well, we found her in blue pants and a shirt, but okay, it's her. Yes.
Yeah, it is frightening when you get into that reality of how good our memories actually are.
Yes.
But that's the thing, is because Vader in Rebels looks like somebody accurately remembering the spirit of Vader, but he's wearing blue pants. Not literally, but yeah. And I have a 2-pack of the Rebels Vader and Ahsoka, and we picked it up, meaning to give it to a relative, and I was not collecting anywhere near as much. And my wife was like, actually, I think we have. I have a better present for our niece. And I was like, thank God, because I want this 2-pack so bad. I love that Vader so much.
I love that.
So how do you feel about the idea of retroactive changes? For example, a special edition of Rogue One to enhance the Leia and Tarkin CGI is something I've seen people talking about on social media. Or a special edition of the Mando Season 2 finale with new Luke Skywalker. How do you feel about those things actually happening?
All for it, and put an exclamation point at the end of it. I've always been one that's pretty positive about the Tarkin one, but even then, time is just going to make it not stand up as much compared to what we got going now. So let's get in there. Star Wars has a precedent there of going back and giving us some special editions. The Leia one, though, I love that moment, love the character. It falls short for me a little bit. So if they want to go back and revisit that in any way or form, I'm open to that. And Mando Season 2. I mean, you don't even need to tell us. Just do it. Just do it. So that when I log back in, I'm kind of like, wait a minute. Did they change this? I don't know. But I got this version. It looks good.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so of two minds about this one. I feel like it is you start with just it's digital technology on a recent thing, sure. Just up the digital technology. Is that any different than like scanning and preserving the film, but I feel like it's opening Pandora's holocron, right?
Yeah.
Of what changes will be made. We're even in this era where like, hey, they made Gene Sky go away. They made the coffee cups in Game of Thrones go away. So mistakes can go away,
Yeah.
So how do we feel about, aging up technology, specifically these faces? Great. But then do we start to be like, that blaster bolt should change? And then, you start down the special editions road where if they're like, well, if you're going in anyway, I've actually been thinking about it and we shouldn't have cut these 2 lines of dialogue. So put that back, Yeah.
Yeah. Which is always the debate around George and what he did with his own art. Yeah. And yeah, I think you're not wrong there. You're not wrong.
Yeah. I tend to be with you of just, update it. The Luke in Book of Boba Fett for me is way, way better than in Mando Season 2. So there's a part of me is just like, I kind of just want to see that out of curiosity. But I also do like the argument that people have made about the special editions a million times, that films and television shows are a record of when they were made, right?
Yeah.
And that's a part of the value of, this is the technology was at the time. So I would be interested in, if it were like, let's say they go back to Mando Season 2. It's 1 episode, right?
Yeah.
With their different Luke tech. Would you like that to be an option? Like you can go in on Disney Plus and see updated The Rescue or original The Rescue, or if
Mhm.
they ever released, say, Mandalorian on physical media, that you could choose, because it's like that. There's happens for Doctor Who episodes, old ones, of like
Okay.
choose to watch the original or choose to watch with updated special effects. Would you like that option?
Yeah, I think maybe to end arguments about it, I would. I
Mhm.
think I would only watch the new ones. I mean, look, hot take, man. Updated Star Wars stuff, special editions, despite Joe Yowzas and all these other things, I am okay with a lot of the cleanup, and don't feel the need to go back to the original trilogies. That is my journey with it, not everyone's. So I don't need it. But to end the argument, yeah, give us an option. Give us an option.
Yeah, I think that would make me feel better about opening Pandora's holocron, that the record of what it was doesn't get lost, because I think that has value too. And then you
It
can kind
does.
of respect both. You can respect, like, here's the stamp made in time, and here is the creators, owners wanting to make improvements and
Yeah.
keep it up to date, especially when the changes aren't reaching back years and years into the past, but pretty recent.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also think it could be an incredibly great motivator of, if they're ever going to make physical media releases of some of the Disney Plus shows, like if it was like buy season 2 of Mando, and get new Luke face. Yeah.
Now with new Luke face.
Now with new Luke face, you choose. Yeah. Any final thoughts on this big, wide discussion of all the changing appearances in Star Wars?
No. Thanks for all listening who are taking that journey with us here. That sometimes I'm asking questions on my own answers and thinking about things and being honest about some of the stuff that just doesn't affect me. Not because I am unaffected by the discussions in Star Wars, but I just don't live in some of those things. But also getting to admit that I do think he looks like an uncooked dumpling. That's going to be my line of the show, and we're going to see where it goes from there. At the end of the day, it's all our personal point of view. I just I don't want. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, try if you have an issue with the Grand Inquisitor, don't make it your personality on Twitter for a week. That's the only statement I'll have.
I very much agree with your sentiment. However, I think we should show proper respect and call him Grand Uncooked Dumpling.
Grand Uncooked Dumpling.
He's in charge of all the other uncooked dumplings. I think for me, it is I want to absorb the Star Wars lessons that a lot of us talk about, of accept what you can't change and celebrate what you can control. And there's always going to be variations in looks, and some I'll like and some I won't. I don't personally have control over that, and I have to accept that. That creators are going to make decisions for lots of reasons, and I'm not in the room. I'm not making those decisions. What I can control is how much it affects my enjoyment. So that's for me why I'm like, I want to be honest that the lightsabers, I wish they were wider in Rebels. But then I can't control that. They're not. And I can control how much it affects my enjoyment. Or to your point, Ken, I can affect how often I bring it up, right?
Yeah.
Which might affect others' enjoyment. If every time we talked about Rebels on this podcast, it's like thin lightsabers, I can accept how much it affects my enjoyment and how much I bring negativity to the table. Be honest about it, but I can control how much it affects my discussion, my focus. And it was a fun realization in all of our talk of the Maul Kenobi duel. I just don't think about it at all.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing for me. And we'll see how much thought I end up giving to the Grand Inquisitor's head. Here is a hopefully fun question to close. Which would frighten you more to run into in a dark alley? Live action Count Dooku or Clone Wars Count Dooku?
The answer is live action, because it's Christopher Lee and he's killed men for the sake of a good cause, the war. But I would be afraid of that. He's more terrifying to me.
Doing Scandinavian metal.
Yeah.
Yes, he did. Is Christopher Lee did in real life. Yeah, I think my answer is ultimately going to be, I would be most frightened by live action head, but then cartoon body. Like how do you get those proportions?
Yeah. And is he in exquisite pajamas or not?
That would be the best. That would be the best. That's the Star Wars celebration merch I need, is exquisite pajamas that we can purchase to be more like Dooku. Well, that's our big look at changing appearances in Star Wars. Ken, any final thoughts, or do you want to let people know where they can find us?
My final thought is I now need some cartoon pajamas. There you go.
Yeah. If they sell them, they have to be accurate to the cartoon. Yes.
Yeah. But if you're looking for us, we're the Force Center podcast feed. Tell us about our appearance. Don't tell us about our appearance. We're on Twitter at Force Center Pod. We're on Instagram and YouTube as well. We replay audio versions of our show on the YouTube channel, but we've been firing up the cameras we did last week. We really appreciate a lot of you who joined us, and we'll do it again soon. Facebook page is Force Center Podcast. Podcast available on Acast, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and a whole lot of other places. Just search and find us. Merch available at tpublic.com/user/Force Center. You can support us directly at patreon.com/Force Center. You can find me at Ken Napzok. Go to my website, kennapzok.com. Find all the things I do, including my music show, Pop Rockin' Radio on Mixcloud. You like some pop rock, 3 chords and the truth? I got you covered. Live shows generally every Saturday. Joseph, you.
Yeah, you can find me Twitter, Instagram, TikTok is at Joseph Scrimshaw. And for all of my other comedy adventures, links to my other podcast, Obsessed, you can go to my website, josephscrimshaw.com. But for now, for myself, for Ken, for the Grand Inquisitor's head, however tall it might be, this has been Force Center.